Good morning, and this is our last video for the week. Sorry, the last one went on a little bit longer than I expected, but the first one was a little bit shorter than I expected, so it all kind of measures out in the end. So we're still looking at Circles and Squares by Ali Cobby Eckermann, and we are now going to look at. We already looked at repetition, so I'm just looking at my to-do list. Okay, so we're going to look at punctuation. Now, we looked at punctuation in the beginning because I found it interesting when I first read through why she was capitalizing certain words. And if you remember, we spoke about how when we capitalize words, we're giving them significance or importance. And for her to choose to make certain things important, such as her capital L life, her capital F family, all that kind of stuff, it gives an extra layer of understanding of where Ali was coming from when she wrote this poem. The other thing that's really interesting is that there is no other real punctuation going on. We do have, excuse me, um, words like this, and yeah, that's about it when it actually comes to punctuation. She's using very strong language, it's not open for interpretation, and she's giving us rest breaks at the end of a sentence rather than putting in commas or full stops. If you have a look at this, there is no full stop. The story doesn't end. So even when we get down to here, full stops are used to give us a break, to tell us that the idea we have is over. Full stop, next sentence is about a new idea or connecting to our main idea. There is no full stop here. There's absolutely no full stop, which means that she is going to continue her story. Her story doesn't end here with this idea of the square hole stops me in my entirety. If we can think about the lack of a full stop on that sentence, that layer of meaning she's putting into what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words is actually quite impressive. Even though right now she feels like the square hole is stopping her, it doesn't mean it's going to stop her forever. And that's what this punctuation or lack thereof is really telling us, is that this is her telling her truth. It is not edited. I'm sure it is edited. I'm sure the first version did not look like this. But with the lack of punctuation, it looks like it's not edited, that it's just a series of thoughts flowing on from one thought to the next. And she's talking about her square house versus her circle house or circle family. There's no commas up the top here or full stops. There's none of that. So I'm just going to add, because we need to make sure that we're taking notes. So where were we? New comment. And we said what I just said, that backing a full stop implies that Ali... I just totally forgot how I spell her name. Sorry. Ali Cobby Eckermann is not finished, and she will not be limited. Okay. Remember when we're taking notes, we don't need to write that whole thing. So I just spoke for like a minute about what this full stop or lack thereof means. And so my notes is literally like a couple of sentences. So it's really important that when we're taking notes, we don't need to write our full thoughts. Our notes are just to remind us. So when we come back and let's just say we have to write an extended response regarding punctuation and the power it has within poetry, we have this little dot point here that we can extend into a full alarm paragraph if we wanted to. And this would be our example that at the end of the poem there is no full stop. Okay, our next one is number 9. So we're going to circle any words that are impactful or interesting. Okay, determine their meaning. Are there patterns? What does it reveal about their attitude? So I think the first one we have to talk about again is her use of traditional language. And I'm going to add it to this one because I don't think this one has a second dot point yet. So why? Why is it impactful or interesting? We already spoke about this in the last video, that she's inviting us into her native language. Okay, so, but not only is she inviting us, to some people this may make them not want to read the poem because the language is too hard. And for those people, she's not apologetic about it. She's like, this is my language, this is how I speak. These are the words that are important to me. This terminology is me. It's my person. It's like me saying that I am Australian. I am young Kachujara. I will get that by the end of the term, I swear. And so it's important for her to start off. And not only am I this person, my mother is that person, her mother is this person, my family, my capital F family, is are these people? So let's just write that. So repetition is included. So we understand that Ali Cobby Ackerman. And remember, we are always using her full name. I know a couple of times I have only called her by her first name, since it can be a bit of a mouthful for me to say her full name all the time. But when we are writing anything professional, like such as an essay, a response, or anything your teacher will read, you need to use her full name, which is Ali Cobby Eckerman. In your notes, you could shorten it to ACE, like just her initials, but always make sure that when you are writing something that your teacher will see, you use her full name. So we understand is unapologetic in regards to her native heritage, because we've already written up here that the repetition is used so we get introduced into her world, but we also wanted to talk about how the repetition is used as a form of how she's unapologetic about who she is and where she comes from. And if that scares you off, then you don't deserve to be in the rest of her poem. I also think it's really interesting how she sort of drizzles her Indigenous culture throughout this poem. Okay, I think it's really nice that we have here like the elders, healing circle, Aboriginal culture, universal life, all that kind of stuff. So I want to draw attention to that. So we are going to highlight them in this color. So everything where she talks about being Indigenous, we're going to highlight into this color. My life travels in circles, my Aboriginal culture, my universal life. So I really feel like this universal life thing is an Indigenous thing. So let's just have a look. Excuse the mess of my screencast there. So we're going to look up universal life Indigenous Australia. We're just going to have a look and see what comes up. When that is, what do we have here? Um, hmm. It doesn't seem to be something that is uniquely theirs. Let's try to corner in on this a little bit more. Universal life force, that could be interesting. Oh, here we go. Um, So this short and largely forgotten text lamented the way Australian had disputed the organic rhythm of the universal life cycle. So that is eating a colonial act. So it does seem to have some connection to Indigenous. Here we go here. So the dreaming or the universal life force. So it's almost like a religious experience for them if they're connecting it to their dreaming stories, which is like their religion. So there we go, universal life. Grew up in a white man's world. None of this, none of this, none of this. One day I met my mother. Healing circle. Now we know that this is also part of her Indigenous culture. Um, Sat down together. Okay, so we gathered closely together. I want to look at that. Feasting. That's also an interesting word choice. Beaches. Our land that belongs in a big round planet. Now, if I was doing this on pen and paper, I would definitely be double underlining some of this stuff. So I would like to say like this whole section here um, is about her Indigenous life, and that is about her adoptive life. This whole sentence, our land that belongs to the big round planet, should be highlighted in this green color. But if I highlight in the green color, we lose that gold color as well as the orange because it's a computer. So I don't want to ruin that. And that's why I'm just doing the beginning of sentences. There we go. That is part of my life circle. Again, talking about our Indigenous life. Okay. So if we have a look, it's not just in the beginning when she's talking about her Indigenous culture. The only time she really doesn't talk about it is in this stanza here, which is totally dedicated to her square life and her square personality. Okay, and then later on here when she's talking about her Indigenous life in detail, as well as here, and even down the bottom She doesn't explicitly say this is my Indigenous life, but she does sort of allude to the fact that she cannot fit completely into her circle life because she is a little bit of a square still, because she was raised by German Catholics. So she does have a certain Western idea about what should and shouldn't be done that may never go away because it was done during her formative years. Um, the other thing here, I spoke about this before, this feasting on round ants and berries and how different that is to this square life. So I'm just gonna, really feel like I need to like draw more attention to this. So I'm just gonna grab my red pen. Let's see if this works. Oh, look at that. Fantastic drawing. Look at this. This just, oh, so good. And we're just going to connect them. Um, yep. And um, I want to be able to write notes, but my handwriting is really bad on this. Oh, actually, can I insert, where are you? A text box. No, we don't want that kind of text box. We want, okay, I'm just going to have to draw it. I apologize. Juxt. you. I'm just going to write juxt because I know in my shorthand that means juxtaposition. So she's comparing, like I explained before, she is comparing her square life and how she was raised in her square buildings with her square table, and how it's compared to her round life. And we can just look at the language used there because remember, we're looking very closely at the moment of words that are impactful. And this word feasting has always like caught me. This sentence here just says so much of how different she feels about her Indigenous culture when compared to her um, adoptive life before she met her Indigenous family. So if we have here, we lived in a square house. She doesn't. There's no interaction between the we. Whenever she talks about her square house and her square plots with her square paddock and square tables, okay, it's we kept animals, we sat and ate, we sat in chairs, I slept in bed. There's no interaction here. There's a lot of interacting language when she talks about her Indigenous life. Like we gathered closely together, okay, in big round campfires. Now we spoke before about how we're getting imagery in this section, that she's giving us a lot more imagery than she gave in this section, where really we picked fruits and vegetables, but here we have all these roundness and circles and the bush tucker and the meat and the beaches and the dirt, and it's very organic. This stanza, she's using very different language here, and that's to show that she did not feel comfortable in her square house. She feels comfortable around her round campfires. We ate, so we ate together, feasting. We ate meat from animals that lived in round burrows. Okay, it's like we kept animals. There's no interaction between the we and the animals. They just kept them. They sat and ate. Here we slept in a circle in beaches around our fires. Like you can just, it feels homely, like more like a hug than the square house, which doesn't have any emotion at all. There's no hugging in this square house, but there's all this warmth and good feelings around these round campfires. Okay, so our last one is reread the poem. Now, I really feel by now we've kind of gone through it a lot. Um, and we have a lot of notes. Remember all these notes here, which is really good. And so if you get to the end of all nine steps and you're like, I still don't get it, like this poem has all this stuff in it. It has all these imagery and alliteration and similes and metaphors and personification and interesting language choices. But what is it about? And I really feel like that's what you need to do when you finish your poem. So when you finish reading your poem and you finish doing all these steps, I would recommend the last thing you do for yourself is just write a couple of sentences on what this poem is about. How does it make you feel? So, for example, this one, and I'm just gonna. Oh, we've got to get out of that one. There we go. Oh, whoops! Didn't mean to do that. Draw. Um, okay, let's just. Yep, there we go. Okay. I'm just going to connect it. Actually, I'm going to put it down the bottom so it's easier to read because we have a lot of notes over there. So I'm just going to connect it to her name because I feel like that's a nice personal thing to do. And we got our comment. And so this poem is about Ali Cobby Eckerman. Whoops, I thought about the first time. Eckerman. Understanding and expressing her feelings towards the dual ways she was raised. Okay, so these sorts of notes that you write to yourself are the little things. So let's just say in 10 weeks from now, not 10 weeks because that's next term, let's just say at the end of the term, we ask you guys to give us an extended response. And the question could be something like, how does Ali Cobby Eckerman talk about her dual relationships between her birth parents and her adoptive parents? And then if you're going through your notes and you're like, oh, actually, that poem is totally about that. So you know that all these notes are useful. That's how notes work. You don't need to write an essay to yourself when you're writing a note about something. It's just a little reminder to yourself. So if you forget or you're looking for certain key terms, you're like, oh, there it is. That's the key term. This is her expressing her feelings. When we're looking at, if the question asked, what kind of imagery does Ali Kelby Eckerman use in circles and squares? You just go here and you're like, oh, there's imagery. Oh, there's imagery. um, you don't need to read the poem and do this all over again. That's kind of the point of annotating a poem. Is one, you get all your notes so you understand the poem better, and secondly, it really gets you to read the poem and understand the poem. I've lost count how many times we've actually read this poem or how many times I've read this poem, and I don't think it's important how many times we read it because, like I told you, I taught this last year and I'm still picking up things out of it. Like that bottom line that I thought was like totally missed it last year when I was teaching, and this year it's all I can think about. So that's it for the last video. I hope you guys had fun, and I'm sorry in advance if it wasn't exactly how your teacher does it. This is just how I do it. Especially on a computer, I've never had to do it this way before, so hopefully maybe I'll find some better ways of showing how annotation works. Leave your comments if they're useful comments for me to learn more. And if you found this helpful, please let me know as well, because I really just want to try to help you guys while we're doing this home learning stuff. All right, I will see you in the next video. Bye.